Creation only leads to destruction, and destruction paves the way for greater creations. This is a universal principle, and the mighty artificer Urza is the person in Magic the Gathering who embodies it the best. As you well know, because we've all been playing these cards, he's created some insane machines, led multiple wars, and destroyed entire planes, yet none of that was as bad as the relationship that he destroyed with his brother, Mishra. So I think it's time that we talk about Urza, not only because he's one of my favorite characters to play, but also because I really think that his lore is some of the coolest stuff I have ever read in fiction. It's really layered and tragic, and I'll be real with you, I did not actually realize who Urza actually was, and I bet that you might not have either. Urza's younger years. The beginning of Urza's saga starts not just with Urza, but also with his brother, Mishra, making them one of the most important sibling duos in the entire series, which I'm kind of starting to realize there are quite a couple of sibling pairs in Magic the Gathering. Anyways, Urza and his younger brother Mishra were born to a noble family of Pendragon in Argif, one of the coastal kingdoms of Phyrexia in the massive plain of, you probably guessed it, yes, Dominaria. Fun fact, by the way, that I personally didn't realize until now, they are actually not twins. Urza was essentially born on January 1st of year 0 AR, and Mishra was born on the equivalent of December 31st, the first and last days of the same year, later marked also as 0 AR, which, yes, doesn't really follow the rules of birth that I was taught in middle school, but hey, maybe things work a little bit different here. Also, I really ought to make a big Magic timeline once this channel gets like, I don't know, 1 million views or something. That'd be pretty cool. I kind of feel bad putting that on my editor. Yet, anyhow, like a true Midwestern boy, Urza's family was marked by instability. Don't worry, I can't actually say that because 3 of my team members working for this channel with me are actually Midwesterners, so I guess I can say it. Anyhow, Urza's mother died while he was still young, and their father remarried into the aristocracy, and in a very Cinderella vibe, their stepmother treated the brothers with indifference at best and absolute cruelty at worst, fostering emotional distance that would later become a real rivalry. Spoiler alert that you should probably know, these brothers are not very close. But if that wasn't enough yet, at the age of 10, so 10 AR, their father fell gravely ill and sent the brothers away to serve as students under his old friend Tocasia, an archaeologist studying ancient ruins. And at this point, I'm just gonna assume that these boys were cursed because shortly after that, Tocasia died, which left Urza and Mishra as young little orphan boys. I'd argue that this was the moment that really acted as a catalyst for these boys to grow and become the near godlike characters that we eventually see and who we actually know in the story. The guiding hand of Tocasia. Now, hold on a second. I actually skipped a little bit ahead here just to really show you how their early lives overall developed, but I kind of wanted to flip it back to before Tocasia died because it's actually a really important part of Urza's and, yes, by association, also Mishra's life. Under Tocasia's guidance, Urza and Mishra became apprentices at her archaeological dig site. And here they primarily studied the remnants of the Thran, an advanced and mysterious civilization that had ruled Phyrexia thousands of years earlier. And if you know anything about me, which to be fair you probably don't yet unless you came from the O'Hara channel, this is the type of stuff that I live for. I love deep ancient lore. And it really does explain a lot about Urza's role as a master artificer because these ruins were filled with incomprehensible machines, artifacts, and power sources far beyond current understanding at that point in the Magic universe. Now, during their studies, a very clear divide started to form between the two brothers already. Not a malicious one at this point, but one that really shows the different natures of Urza and Mishra. I mean, Urza was a big, elite, top-level thinker type of guy. He kind of preferred intense study rather than physical labor, so he ended up analyzing things instead of diggy holing, right? And on the flip side, Mishra got his hands real dirty. Old Muddy Hands Mishra is what the girls called him because he got hands-on, deep in the pits, digging up some hot and spicy artifacts. Now, during their years together with Tocasia, the brothers made several big and important discoveries, including early mechanical constructs such as one of the most iconic cards of early Magic, the Ornithopter, that I actually play in my Hammer Time deck in Modern. Such a fun card, and it's free. You can cast it for 0 mana. However, this wasn't their biggest discovery yet. That honor belonged to the Caves of Koilos, a supermassive cavern complex filled with Thran relics and also, coincidentally, housing a long sealed gateway to Phyrexia. Oh, that's pretty awesome. I learned about this in the Karn and Ajani video we made, but now I kind of see the connection. I really should channel my inner Urza, or I guess Mishra, and dig into their lore at a later time. It's kind of weird to think that casually there was a massive cave that led to an evil planet somewhere, but I guess Phyrexia might not have been too evil yet before the later events of these boys' story. Gotta ask the Thran physician himself maybe at some point. Actually, I don't want to talk to Yawgmoth. He doesn't seem like a pleasant person. Anyways, within this cave, the brothers also discovered a massive power stone sealing this very portal. And like all good brothers, both wanted a turn on the Xbox and shattered it in two, which led to each brother claiming a fragment, the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. And this moment became the true seed of tragedy here. Their mutual desire for the other stone ignited the conflict later known as the Brotherhood's End. By the way, another really great card. Love dealing 3 damage to everything and destroying some artifacts, which was essentially just drunk Mishra going and trying to fight Urza for his stone, and when Tocasia got in the middle of them, the stone's power surged and killed their teacher. Which, of course, then marked the end of their shared apprenticeship and the beginning of open hostility between the two brothers. Chief Artificer Urza. Alright, with the childhood stuff out of the way, I think we can now properly punch in on just Urza. Because after Tocasia's death, Urza was a bit lost and searched for a new purpose. So he traveled to Yotia, which was the military elite of Terrassier, where he began working as a clockmaker's apprentice so that he could refine all of his mechanical artificing skills. And as you can imagine from a prodigy such as Urza, his talents soon drew some attention. When the warlord of Krook announced a public contest to move a massive jade statue, Urza, in a bit of an incel sort of way, did not care for the real prize, which was Krook's daughter in marriage. Instead, Urza moved the statue for knowledge, because the dowry included a valuable Thran tome. Urza built an immense machine to move the statue and succeeded, marrying Kayla bin Krook, and his marriage, however, as you can imagine, was devoid of any affection. On their wedding night, Urza abandoned his wife's bed to study the Thran book instead, which is what he actually wanted, and he soon assumed the role of Chief Artificer of Krook, throwing himself obsessively into his work and increasingly detaching from personal relationships. I gotta say, like, Urza, I really wanted to like you, man, in this video, but we've gotta work on the relationship skills, like, as well, as this is unacceptable. By the way, therapy would have actually gone a long way to avoid the next big issue coming up in your life, and maybe having a wife who loved you and was there to work through things could have helped you too. But hey, the books are calling, am I right? The Brothers' War. Arguably one of the most infamous events in Magic the Gathering history, it's time for us to talk about the defining moment of Urza's story, the Brothers' War. A battle that literally transcends time, paving the way for the rise, fall, rise again, and secondary fall of the Phyrexian Empire. Here's the setup. While Urza was rising in Yotia, Mishra was getting busy in the desert by consolidating power amongst the desert peoples of the Phylagi, becoming a trusted advisor to their ruler. One might say he became a Phylagi archaeologist. And can we just say, Mishra al-Gaib, may your thopter chip and shatter. Now, over time, political tension escalated into open conflict here. As you can imagine, there were some betrayals, a few ambushes, and plenty of failed peace efforts, the most notable being the Summit of Corlinda, which is what finally pushed the brothers towards actual war. What is it good for, man? Yotia formally declared war because Big Brother Urza really has no emotions, but does have some insane mechanical armies at this point. Armies that clashed with Mishra's dragon engines, which are just objectively way cooler, I think. And this conflict spread across Terryzir and led to the fall of Krug. Rest in peace, Krug, who will be missed. And the conflict also demonstrated the terrifying scale of the brothers' inventions as increasingly more and more elaborate machines devastated the entire land. The war dragged on for decades, spiraling further out of control as both brothers pursued victory at any cost, which I gotta say is pretty much what happens at my tables at Friday Night Magic too. But I know what you're here for. How did it end? Give me the details, Manu! Whoa, chill. I've got you, man. The final confrontation came at Argoth. It was here that Urza discovered that Mishra had been corrupted by Phyrexian influence, gradually transforming into a living machine. Okay, so I guess I was wrong. Phyrexia was probably always bad, and I'm more curious about that cave portal now more than ever. In despair and fury, Urza unleashed the Golgothian Silix, aka the Bowl of Destruction. The explosion annihilated both armies, sank the entire subcontinent of Argoth, altered Dominaria's climate, and triggered a literal ice age. And something that I somehow didn't even clock had not happened yet here, Urza's Planeswalker Spark finally ignited as the Might Stone and Weak Stone were rejoined, becoming part of himself. Which is actually pretty sick and thematic considering what I learned about the end of his story, but also it's just kind of wild that this is probably the longest it's taken me to explain a character's life before their spark actually ignited. So I guess good on you for having a normal life before planeswalking, Urza. Well, I mean, normal probably isn't a good way to describe it, especially when you consider that after the Super Brothers War 64, Urza's body was destroyed and reforged with the 2 Power Stones becoming his eyes. Which, okay, I just want to sit on for a moment here because I normally don't tend to overanalyze too much here on this channel. But man, that's such a sick twist of fate. The 2 objects that caused the rift between his brother and him became his eyes. He literally sees through the mistakes and failures of him and his brother that also killed their teacher. An eternal reminder literally burned, well, it's not burned into his eyes, it's his eyes, of the conflict that he caused, how it started, and the fact that power is more important than anything else to him. And, you know, since as an artificer, sight is arguably the single most important sense to you, Urza cannot go a single day, work on any project, or simply exist without seeing through the failures of his past. That's pretty gnarly, dude. Urza's got mad beef with Phyrexia. Now we get to the Urza that you and I probably know the best, the obsessive man who wants to destroy and dismantle Phyrexia. Around this time in the story, Urza had realized that Mishra's corruption had been orchestrated by the Phyrexian agent Gix. Jix? I think it's Gix, that's what I've always called him. Urza became consumed with guilt and grief, as he should, by the way, and it gave him a completely new purpose. He dedicated his new existence to the destruction of Phyrexia and its ruler, my boy, Yawgmoth. By the way, little side rant here, in case you don't play Modern but mostly play Commander or, you know, any other format, let me know in the comments, by the way, what you play. Me as a Modern player, Yawgmoth, I have a deep loathing for that character. It kind of, you know, goes really well with, you know, him being the originator of all the Phyrexian, but having a deck that goes infinite by putting -1/-1 counters on your stuff and drawing you cards and just looping undying creatures onto the battlefield, not very fun. But this is just my take as someone who likes Ornithopters and slapping big Colossus hammers on them instead. Which, you know, I would argue much more fun and much more honest Magic, but this might be where opinions differ. Back to the story. It's kind of crazy to think that I used to think that Urza was this noble, wise figure who was a little bit too psychotic about destroying Phyrexia at any cost for the greater good. Nope. It really seems like the dude threw Dominaria into total chaos war against the living machines because of another war the Brothers' War. And don't get me wrong, he probably was noble too, but man, this is a whole extra layer to the conflict that I never knew about until, researching for this video. And I also left out something very important about the end of the Brothers' War, which is what it really cost on a cosmic scale. The Golgothian Silex is literally an insane device, and when infused with Urza's power and the counterforce of Mishra's power too, an event known as the Silex Blast formed the Shard of the 12 Worlds. To quickly explain this, check out this map here. This is a fairly good approximation of the MTG universe created by Otis, which is really handy as a tool to explain how all of this works. There's the planes, the blind eternities, which are the spaces in between. Makes sense, right? You might have seen this before. Great. Now, see right here, this is Dominaria, the multiverse's nexus, which became that when the Silex Blast created this moment where 12 planes centered on Dominaria were tethered together and cut off from the rest of the multiverse, thus creating the Shard of the 12 Worlds, which had a barrier formed in the Blind Eternities, making it impossible for anyone to get in or out of the Shard. So the plane of Phyrexia, it wasn't really happy because it was now out of the Shard and its portal was cut off from Dominaria, who is now inside of the Shard. Get it, right? And the reason I wanted to bring all of this up is because Urza found himself locked outside of the Shard on all the other planes outside of Dominaria as well. There, he encountered Chancha, a newt created as a Phyrexian sleeper agent, but discarded as expendable. And together they launched an all-out assault on Phyrexia using one of Mishra's dragon engines, since, as I said, and Urza also realized, they are way cooler than what Urza's been cooking up. Urza managed to breach deep into the plane, but the Phyrexian god, Yawgmoth, invaded his mind directly and booted Urza out, making his trauma even worse, and putting also a massive target on his head as well, which kind of makes sense, if someone invaded my plane of creepy, oily, hive mind monsters, I'd be a little bit worried that that guy might come back as well. This caused Urza to planeswalk for many years, fleeing from the Phyrexians. He briefly visited Zendikar, but deemed its defenses insufficient. Good call, since Zendikar has a nasty history of being invaded too. Eventually, Urza found a safe haven in Serra's realm, where Serra healed him, and, as you might have seen coming, after Urza departed, Phyrexia invaded and corrupted her entire plane. Dude, Urza, come on, man. Like, you kind of suck at being a homie and a husband also. I bet you're a really bad dad too. Anyways, Urza was pretty stuck in his ways and needed a system shock to really hop back on the saddle and kick some ass, so Chancha recruited a Dominarian named Ratape, I think Ratape, to impersonate Mishra, hoping to traumatize Urza out of his fixation. Ratape's ability to hear the Weakstone song convinced Urza, at least briefly, that he could move on, and thank the gods, it worked. Urza regained focus, locked in, and once more became the mighty incel that we all know and love so much, resuming his efforts against Phyrexia, and then promptly, like everyone in Urza's life, Ratape and Chancha were killed when Urza confronted the OG Phyrexian sleeper agent Gix in the caverns of Koilos. At the very least, their shared sacrifice allowed Urza to defeat Gix and learn that apparently there was shared Phyrexian ancestry of the Thran, the ancient race that Urza was studying, that Yawgmoth is part of because he's a Thran physician. Makes sense, with the advanced tech and portal to the plane in the same cave. Which, I gotta say, come on, Urza, like, that was so obvious, even I could have figured it out, and I'm not a big genius. That's Professor Urza to you, Teferi. So, after all of that fun nonsense in the caves and murder, Urza founded the Tolarian Academy to confront Phyrexia's long advantage. Meanwhile, the professor founded the Tolarian Community College for everyone looking to do their gen eds before entering the Phyrexian conflict to save on those nasty student loans. Under the alias Master Malzra, he gathered Dominaria's greatest minds, including, but not limited to, Baron, Teferi, and Rain. Drawing on recovered knowledge, Urza constructed a time-viewing device to observe the ancient war that had banished Phyrexia. It's sort of like a TV, but, you know, to the past. Ooh. There is a urban legend about the so-called chronomancer that allegedly someone in the Vatican has that can watch the past. So that might be the inspiration for that one. And then Urza gave birth. I mean, he created Karn. He did this by implanting Chansha's Heartstone into a silver golem, which made Karn capable of navigating temporal rifts, since apparently silver does that in magic. Fun fact. Also, it's really cool now to see who Chansha was to Urza. Kind of adds a new layer of personality to Karn too, making him even cooler than he was before. Now, some of Urza's early experiments succeeded, but Phyrexians infiltrated the academy, and in desperation, Urza sent Karn back in time to prevent catastrophe, but the temporal vortex exploded. The Tolarian temporal disaster destroyed much of the academy and killed hundreds, froze Teferi in time, and generally messed up a bunch of stuff. Yet another calamity at the hands of Urza, it seems. Urza's Atonement. Urza rebuilt the academy and learned to exploit Tolaria's time rifts because apparently that's how he moves on. Fast time bubbles allowed decades of research to be completed in hours, while slow time waters expanded lifespans. Okay, wait a second. Maybe that's actually fine because those powers sound pretty sick. I kind of wish I had a fast time bubble for making these videos. That'd be pretty cool, and doing research on them. Regardless, for the first time ever, Urza began to close the gap between Dominaria and Phyrexia, so watch out, Yawgmoth. Daddy Urza's coming for your buns. Your cold, metal, supple buns. He traveled Dominaria seeking alliances and returned to Yavimaya, Yavimaya Coast, where Multani forced him to relive the destruction of Argoth. Actually, that's so sick. I kind of love when Urza is forced to confront the sins of his past, a reoccurring theme in his story. It's kind of my favorite thing at this point, talking about him. Now, this actually worked by trapping Urza inside a Magnagoth tree, which forced him to experience all the pain of Titania, the Maro elemental of Argoth. Pretty sick, dude. So sick. And during this pain session, Urza was rescued by Baron, who summoned him during a Phyrexian assault on Tolaria. And this finally forced Urza to go big dog mode, which revealed his identity as a planeswalker to the rest of his students. Multani chose to follow, then witnessed the Phyrexia's horrors firsthand, and promptly did the reasonable thing, joining Urza's cause. Forging the Legacy. Urza then began constructing what he called Dominaria's salvation, the skyship Weatherlight. This epic skyboat vehicle thing was built from Thran metal and fused with the Weather Seed, which allowed it to travel at immense speeds and even shift between planes, which doesn't seem that crazy, but remember, the only way to do that in Magic is being a planeswalker or using the Omen Paths. Like, I know we mostly talk about planeswalkers on this channel so far, but it's actually kind of crazy as a feat for a non-sparked person to actually manage to get from plane A to plane B. Pretty much unheard of if you can't, planeswalker teleport. Which is exactly why powering the Weatherlight required the mana of an entire plane. Sheesh, Urza, you're kind of wild. How did you manage to do that? Oh, yes, of course. With regret, Urza used the collapsing plane of Serra's realm as an energy source, attempting to save as many lives as possible. The one that he doomed while, he was trying to avoid Phyrexia. Scum Urza, back in action, boys. Many died, but the Weatherlight was completed, and it still wasn't enough. He needed a super soldier to captain the ship and slay the Phyrexians, so Urza began the Bloodline project to create a living component for his ultimate weapon. Totally normal, ethical, chill behavior. And then the invasion really kicked off. Wrath, an artificial plane created by Yawgmoth, was designed to overlay Dominaria using Flowstone. Oh, don't know what that means? Don't worry, I don't really either. Essentially what happens is Yawgmoth is on plane A, Phyrexia, but he can't easily move a ton of Phyrexian soldiers from plane A to plane B, which is, yes, Dominaria. So Yawgmoth creates plane C, Wrath, and through some plot-contrived magical power, Wrath was able to act as a bridge between planes A and B. In response, Urza raised an artificial army, the Metathran, to stall the coming invasion and prepare for a final confrontation. The first Phyrexian invasion. Yawgmoth, with a new means of tethering Phyrexian Dominaria, attempted to reactivate the portal inside the caves of Koilos. War was here. All of Dominaria's forces united to resist him, including the Weatherlight crew and Urza's creations. At the head of the Phyrexian army stood Tsabo Tavok, one of Yawgmoth's most fearsome generals, and also the OG spider baddie here. The Llanowar Elves, the Metathran, and the product of the Bloodline Project, wielder of the Legacy, and captain of the Weatherlight, Gerard Capuchin, banded together. But there was one more play that Urza countered with: the 9 colossal Titan engines, each piloted by a planeswalker. Teferi was supposed to be one of them, but he bailed, which led to these 9 to pilot the giant battle engines like planeswalker Power Rangers, basically. Each of them had a construct that wielded devastating weapons and reflected their pilot's characteristics, which is pretty anime as hell if you ask me. Very Gurren Lagann before Gurren Lagann. So together, they formed the spearhead of the assault on the Phyrexians. During the invasion of Phyrexia, Tavish Zad betrayed the 9 Titans, killing his fellow planeswalkers. Kind of figured as much. I mean, things were going a little bit too smooth for Urza here, so Big Urz defeated him and used his life force to power soul bombs intended to destroy all of Phyrexia. And yet, Urza hesitated, and through these tainted eyes of his, he saw what his brother once saw too. Urza became fascinated by the artificial nature of Phyrexia. It was so advanced, and there was so much to be studied here. Oh, Urza, you fool.
I'm Peter Fool.
So, in the craziest 180 I have ever seen in any story, Urza dismantled the Master Bomb and surrendered himself to Yawgmoth, but Yawgmoth, like any good leader, was pretty sussed out by this, so he forced Urza to fight Gerard Capuchin in the Phyrexian arena, which did allow him to draw an additional card during his upkeep, but also would prove his new loyalty to Yawgmoth, as he'd have to slay his greatest creation. Urza nearly won this, but was chastised for using some indirect tactics, and on the 3rd attempt, Gerard actually beheaded him, and then Gerard snacked that head and booked right out of Phyrexia. Urza's grand finale. Big plot twist, you will not have seen this one coming, but turns out Urza didn't die when he got beheaded because his consciousness and life force were not inside of his heart or his soul. They were tied now to the Might Stone and the Weak Stone embedded in his severed head. Kind of a very nasty loophole, to be fair, like the magic equivalent of a Horcrux. It's kind of like a Lich's phylactery, right, where the soul is in the object but not the body. So pretty cool play by Urza, I guess. Oh, sorry, still at war. Right, let me get back to that real quick. Yawgmoth invaded Dominaria directly, and realizing his great mistake, Urza revealed the final secret of the legacy weapon because it hadn't been used yet, because to activate it, Urza, Karn, and Gerard had to sacrifice themselves to unleash the full power of the legacy. That's because it required Gerard's life, the stones, and Karn as a vessel. So, in a very noble sacrifice, Urza and Gerard gave their lives to activate the weapon, which destroyed Yawgmoth finally. But Karn didn't die. Karn actually flourished. He inherited Urza's Planeswalker Spark and left Dominaria. And later, after the mending, a totally different event I'll talk about another time, Teferi discovered artifacts that Urza had hidden all across Dominaria. Amongst these was the Starfield Orb containing contingency plans should Urza fail, showcasing that, even in death, Urza's schemes endured and shaped the future of the multiverse. As is the mighty tale of Urza's saga, and if you want to see where the multiverse goes after that and the future of Urza's Spark, you should really check this video here where I break down the story of Urza's kid, Karn, the man, well, the golem who became a god and created his own plane, Otherwise, thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed these videos and you've maybe watched the second or third one, please subscribe. The channel is still small and it really makes a difference to the algorithm.